Hey guys, it's Ricky here. It is now, I think, week 3 of quarantine, and I've been missing you all. I'm really looking forward to checking in with you. In fact, I'm thinking about sending out a Zoom link for a meeting later this week if you're interested in connecting further. But for now, for today, I want us to dive into God's Word and look a little deeper at the story of Job. So, a little background first. Scholars believe that Job is one of, if not the oldest written book in the Bible. We can find it in the Old Testament in a category known as the wisdom literature. So that includes books like Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. And the wisdom literature was most likely written by people known as sages. So these were very intellectual Israelites. They probably also served in other roles like diplomats or palace bureaucrats. Sometimes they were counselors or advisors to the king, or educators or scientists. And so, what these guys would do is they would really look to sort of the natural world around them and also their wisdom tradition when trying to kind of understand life. So they believed that God wove important principles into the very fabric of the universe. For example, they thought that good people would be rewarded for doing good things or being good people, and that evil people would be punished, kind of similar to a modern understanding of like karma, for example. But human experience showed that sometimes good people suffered, right? So the sages really agonized over these contradictions in their system of understanding because they expected the universe to make rational sense. So they began to really question the logic of our world and even God's justice. We can see that thread woven throughout the wisdom literature, which is where we get some beautiful books, some really awesome theological and philosophical musings. So you might be wondering why all that matters. Well, suffering and fear do not discriminate. So that is to say that we all experience pain and anxiety here on this earth. Not one of us is immune to it. And so, as we've been talking about in Refuge this year, in uncertain times, there's really an invitation waiting for us. So it's an invitation to kind of wake up, so to speak, to really like release control, to pay closer attention, and to ask deeper questions. So I was thinking over the past week, if we want to see those concepts modeled for us, we need to look no further than to Job. Job's life was very put together. He had a family, he had friends, he had land and animals and people who worked for him. So in that day and age, he was living a very comfortable, very stable life until, as you know, if you've read the book of Job, everything was taken away from him bit by bit. He experienced awful kinds of suffering, sickness, the loss of his possessions, death of family members, like you name it, right? And throughout his suffering, Job had 3 best friends who were just convinced that Job must have done something absolutely terrible for God to bring such terrible judgment upon him, right? I think this is a good place for just a quick side note. I think we can really learn from Job's friends here. They were not being comforting presences in his life. They were actually tearing him down. They were accusing him. They were really adding to his suffering during what was a very chaotic time for Job. So I think that there is a lesson to be learned here, and just kind of being there for others during uncertain or hard times. We're definitely going through an uncertain time right now, and I think it's important for us all to just give each other a little extra love, whether that's your siblings or your parents or your friends. Don't shame people on social media for leaving their house to take a distanced walk, or Maybe people are seeming kind of unaffected by the crisis, but we all truly deal with things differently, and we don't always see behind the scenes the anxiety that others might be experiencing. So it's a good time to just practice extra empathy. Also, if a friend turns to you for support, don't try to just kind of explain away everything or just fix their problems with really fast solutions. I want us to practice this week being a good listening ear and just an encouraging support. Yeah. Okay, so back to our story. Job goes through a lot of emotions throughout the book, ranging from just like resenting God to challenging God's justice to praising God's sovereignty. But towards the beginning, Job is just really bitter. He can't see outside of his circumstances, and he understandably doubts God's care for him. So in chapter 9, verse 2, he exclaims, "How can a mortal be righteous before God?" So in other words, he's saying, like, what have I done to deserve this, right? Later on in chapter 17, verse 11, he says, "My days have passed, my plans are shattered, and so are the desires of my heart." So some of you may be able to relate to that feeling of your days just kind of passing by right now and your plans being shattered. You might have had concerts or college visits or your senior prom canceled. These things may seem silly next to Job's intense suffering, but I think nevertheless, we're all experiencing this sense of being stuck inside while time in the world just kind of ticks by. And we're really forced to just take each day as it comes, really uncertain of what tomorrow or the next week or even the next month will bring. So the truth is, we never know what tomorrow will bring, right? Proverbs 27:1 says, "Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring." We, I think, as humans are definitely planning people, right? We love to control our lives and look at them through the lens of just what seems good to us. But usually that means we're kind of seeking comfort and stability. And we know another paradox is that comfort and stability don't always bring us happiness and peace, right? We can actually feel more disconnected from God than ever when we're just kind of going about our normal routine or sort of anxious about our plans for the future. So maybe hearing that you don't know what tomorrow will bring might also make you feel a little anxious. But I hope we can take a verse like this today and use it to actually feel a little bit more alive, more focused on what really matters. So things like the posture, the state of our heart, and our relationships that are in our lives. So with God, with ourselves, with others. And another thing I want us to think about is we have all this extra time at home, right? All this time away from our friends and family. I wanted to use that time to kind of think about and expose some lies that we might believe about ourselves. So one of my favorite Christian authors, Henry Nouwen, he says that the 3 biggest lies we believe are, 1, I am what I have. So that's like possessions or popularity or control. 2 is that I am what I do. So that would be productivity or achievements. And 3 is that I am what other people say about me. So that more refers to like reputation or appearances. And I think it's so easy to put our worth and our identity in those lies. So instead, I want us to take this time away from school and everyone else to just refocus your identity on being loved by Christ. That is your only qualification in this life. So I hope that that actually brings you some peace. Going back to our verse, Job said that the desires of his heart were shattered. This made me think of Proverbs 37:4 that says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." So does this mean that God withholds good gifts from us? No, not necessarily, right? In reality, we often think that we know what we want. Could be to get into our dream college, to become team captain, to date a certain person, to have a certain amount of followers or likes on social media. But the only thing that will truly satisfy is a relationship with our Creator. Proverbs 37:4 really just means that despite our circumstances, God is a good parent who knows just what we need. So you can rest in that assurance during this time. Right now, just kind of focus on getting through each day and seeking his presence. There's a song by a Christian artist called Strahan that's called Daily Bread, and I encourage you to look it up on Spotify. But for sake of time, we're going to keep going. So in chapter 19, verses 25 through 27, Job says, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. So when we are going about just our everyday lives and our normal routines, it's really easy to forget that we were not made to belong in this world. We are spiritual and not earthly beings. So I want you to take a moment this week to just think about the fact that one day we will see God, and that every day until then, we can get to know him better and become more like him. So that's really what gives our lives purpose. And that can happen whether we're sitting indoors every day or out exploring. It doesn't matter. In chapter 22, verses 8 through 12, Job says, but if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I don't see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. My feet have closely followed his steps. I have kept to his way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my daily bread. So in this verse, Job starts by feeling like he can't see God anywhere, right? He searches the east, he searches the west. This made me think of Psalm 139, 7 through 10. Hopefully you read that last week. It says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. So we can see from this passage, Job is searching, right? He's questioning, but he's still searching for God. And in his maturity, Job recognizes that God is using the suffering, using the uncertainty, using the fear to test his character. I really think that we can kind of boil life down to this journey of growth, of growing our character in the face of challenges. Romans 5 says we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And we know from James tells us to count it as joy when we encounter trials. I also thought 1 Peter 4, 12 through 13 reminds us not to be surprised when trials come to test us, right? And that in sharing in Christ's sufferings, even if it's just in some small way, can bring us closer to him. So Job recognizes that he can only see things with a limited earthly perspective. He trusts that despite his circumstances, God's in control and God is his ultimate provider. In this passage, Job also speaks of the refining fire. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before, but there are a lot of passages about that in the Bible. It's really just this idea that when we're thrown into the furnace, which represents our trials, we come out like beautiful gold. So not only do we survive our ordeal, but we're actually better because of it. So in conclusion, we live in this world that has a lot of darkness. There are many things like an international pandemic, amongst others, right, that remind us that things are really not as they should be. But we have a creator and a purpose that don't depend on our circumstances or our plans. So I want you to take comfort in that this week. Give yourself, give others some grace. I have a little bit of homework for you. I want you to find a quiet place this week and read God's response to Job. So you can find that in chapters 38 to 39. It's beautiful. It's epic poetry. I hope that you really do take a moment to read and reflect on it. Also, if you're looking for further verses that relate to what we talked about, I'd love for you to look up 1 Peter 5:10, James 1:12, Psalm 18:30, and Isaiah 43:2. All right, that's it for now. I'll put up a link later for the Zoom meeting and give you a little more information about that. But at that time, we can just kind of check in and discuss. I'll be here to answer questions or just hang out with you guys. So yeah, that's it for today. Love and miss you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.